You spent 20 years mastering your craft. You poured your soul into it. And then overnight, an algorithm learned to do it in 2 seconds. Now, society tells you to, reinvent yourself. Tonight, we look at the cosmic dance of Shiva and the profound psychological trauma of having to burn down your own identity just to survive. Welcome to the debate.
Yeah, it's an incredibly dark and frankly exhausting reality we're unpacking today. We are looking at a profound sociological reframing of our current technological era, but we're doing it through an ancient mythological lens.
Right.
Specifically, the Hindu concept of Shiva Nataraja's performance of the Tandava. That's the cosmic dance of destruction and creation.
Exactly. And if you look at the iconography of Shiva in this specific dance, he's holding 2 distinct objects. Up in his upper right hand, he holds the damaru.
The drum.
Right, the drum that beats the rhythm of time and creation. And in his upper left hand, he holds Agni, which is the fire of destruction. In the traditional mythos, Shiva destroys the decaying universe to clear the path for a new one. It's a necessary clearing of the brush.
It's natural.
It's beautiful, even. But the terrifying reality we are facing today is that the era of artificial intelligence and rapid technological disruption has effectively weaponized this cosmic dance against the human psyche.
Well, weaponized because for millennia, this cycle was natural, and crucially, it was slow. You could master a craft, build your entire identity around it, and rely on it for a lifetime, right? The drumbeat of change happened over generations.
Not anymore.
Exactly. Not anymore. Today, the cycle happens every few years. The modern worker is being forced into an unnatural, relentless Tandava. We're being forced to burn down our own identities repeatedly, leading to a profound systemic exhaustion that sociologists are calling identity fatigue.
And this is exactly where our perspectives divide tonight. Because my position is that while the destruction of our professional identities feels agonizing, it is fundamentally an invitation.
An invitation?
Yes, an invitation. Destruction is a purifying process. AI and economic disruption are simply the new cosmic fire. We suffer intensely because we cling to our egos. If we can let go of the rigid definitions of who we are, embrace lifelong learning, and just flow with the rhythm of innovation, we can find harmony in this accelerated cycle.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that. Let me tell you why. Humans are flesh and blood. We are biological organisms, not software updates.
Okay, but
No, think about it. The expectation that someone in their 40s or 50s must continually erase their professional identity and start over from scratch every 2 or 3 years, that isn't an opportunity for enlightenment. It is cruel, systemic torture. The trauma here isn't just about the friction of learning a new piece of technology. It is about the violent stripping away of hard-earned human experience.
I see why you think that. But let me give you a different perspective. Let's break down what we actually mean by experience and identity in this context.
Okay, go ahead.
The core mechanism of the Tandava is that Shiva destroys the decaying universe. I want to really focus on that state of decay.
How is 20 years of experience decaying?
Because when an algorithm can perform a task in 2 seconds that used to take a human 20 years to master, the human mastery of that specific mechanical task has entered a state of decay. It's obsolete.
Wait, obsolete?
Yes, holding onto it and, more importantly, building your ego around it is the true source of the suffering we are seeing.
Wait. Let me make sure I understand your baseline here. Are you suggesting that a human being's accumulated expertise is just a mechanical output?
I am saying that we often confuse the mechanical output for our fundamental value. If your entire self-worth is tied to the physical act of writing lines of code, or drafting a legal contract, or optimizing a supply chain, your identity was always fragile.
Wow.
Discarding a decaying professional identity shouldn't be viewed as a tragedy. The cosmic fire of AI disruption is burning away the fragile, temporary skills and forcing us to discover what is truly immutable about our humanity. We are being liberated from the mundane to focus on higher orders of thinking.
But you are completely glossing over the biological and neurological reality of how expertise is actually formed. Mastery isn't just a fragile ego attachment, It's a deeply ingrained neurological architecture.
I mean, sure, there's a biological component.
It's the primary component. Let's look at the psychological framework of how human intelligence operates. Psychologists divide human cognition into two distinct categories: fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence.
Right, fluid intelligence being our ability to solve novel problems and adapt to completely new situations.
Exactly, and it requires a massive amount of cognitive energy. It is genuinely exhausting. Crystallized intelligence, on the other hand, is our accumulated wisdom. It's our pattern recognition, our expertise.
Which AI can mimic.
Yes, but let me finish the thought. When you spend 10 or 20 years honing a skill, your brain literally builds physical neural pathways that make those processes efficient. You develop intuition, you gain standing in your community. That crystallized intelligence is what allows the human brain to operate without constantly redlining its cognitive engine.
And you are arguing that AI directly attacks that crystallized intelligence.
It annihilates it. AI instantly replicates the crystallized intelligence that took a human 2 decades to build. And by doing so, it invalidates the human's neurological investment.
Invalidates it in the market, maybe?
Invalidates it entirely. If you're listening to this on your commute and you've spent the last decade becoming a senior copywriter or a mid-level paralegal or an architect, you know exactly what this exhaustion feels like in your bones.
Well, yes. It feels like a profound loss.
You didn't just learn a task, you built a predictive model of the world that your brain relies on for stability. To tell someone that this deeply rooted architecture is now just decaying and that they need to just flow into a state of permanent, high-stress fluid intelligence is incredibly reductive.
I understand the neurological mechanism you're describing. I really do. It takes metabolic energy to build those pathways, and it feels like a massive loss when they are bypassed. But doesn't that fundamentally misunderstand what the fire is?
How so?
The fact that we rely on crystallized intelligence to conserve energy is exactly why we stagnate. We want the world to stay static, so our brains don't have to work as hard. But the universe is not static.
It's not about wanting the world to be completely static, though. It's about the biological requirement for stabilization.
But stabilization often becomes entrenchment. The discomfort you are identifying, the pain of being forced back into fluid intelligence, is simply the feeling of growth. Yes, it requires energy. Yes, it causes friction.
A lot of friction.
But the requirement to learn the new tools of tomorrow is a philosophical invitation to free oneself from stagnant definitions. It is an ego death. An ego death is the absolute prerequisite for any meaningful transformation. You cannot step into the new universe if you are desperately trying to guard the neural pathways of the old one.
I just can't agree with that framing. You are taking a profound spiritual concept like ego death and using it to sanitize what is essentially hyper-capitalist burnout.
Oh, I wouldn't call it sanitizing.
It is. The trauma of identity fatigue doesn't come from a spiritual failure to let go. It comes from a biological limit being breached. Let me use an analogy that maps directly onto the mechanics of this destruction. In a forest, a fire is a vital part of the ecological cycle.
Right. The fire burns away the dead wood so the giant sequoias can drop their seeds and grow. That is the mechanism of creation. It's the natural Tandava.
Yes, but think about the mechanism in the human brain. Clearing the canopy means destroying the neural pathways of habit and expertise we rely on to conserve energy. That's our cognitive fuel.
Okay, I'm following you.
If you burn that forest every 40 years, the ecosystem thrives. But if you burn those pathways down every 2 years, you do not get enlightenment. You do not get giant sequoias. You get a barren, scorched desert where nothing with deep roots can ever survive.
That's quite an image.
The brain literally runs out of cognitive fuel. We are burning the human psyche too frequently, and the result is systemic burnout, not some spiritual awakening.
The forest fire analogy is brilliant. I'll give you that. But you are still thinking of the human mind as a sequoia tree. You are assuming that we are meant to have deep, immovable roots in a single discipline. I would argue that we are moving from a solid state of being into a liquid state.
A liquid state? What does that even mean in this context?
It means the pain you are describing, the identity fatigue, comes from trying to maintain a solid shape in a fluid environment.
Right.
Reinvention itself must become our primary identity. We no longer identify as the master of the craft. We identify as the master of adaptation.
That sounds incredibly romantic. but practically speaking, it is deeply exhausting. We are talking about actual human beings, people with mortgages, children, aging bodies, finite cognitive energy.
They can still adapt.
The cognitive plasticity required to entirely rebuild your professional paradigm at age 25 is one thing. You have the surplus fluid intelligence to do it. But to demand that a 50-year-old completely rebuild their neurological architecture and then demand they do it again at 53 and again at 55?
Well, the timeline is shifting, yes.
That is not a liquid state of being. That is existential exhaustion.
But what is the alternative? To artificially halt the creation of the new universe just to preserve the comfort of the old one? The algorithm exists. The disruption is here. The fire is already burning.
I know it's burning. I'm looking at the damage.
Clinging to the old paradigm of a lifelong career is essentially choosing to drown in that river I just mentioned. I am arguing for the ultimate survival skill. The modern Tandava is fierce, absolutely. But by learning to dance within the flames rather than running from them, we transcend the very concept of a fixed identity. We become limitless.
I hear what you're saying about survival, but look at the fundamental purpose behind this disruption. In the myth, Shiva dances to maintain the cosmic balance.
Yes.
The destruction serves the universe. It serves the whole. But in our modern reality, the worker is forced to reinvent themselves, as we established, just to survive the algorithm. The algorithm is not a god. It is a product. We are sacrificing human psychological stability on the altar of corporate efficiency and technological speed.
You really don't think technological progress serves the whole?
Not when the pace outstrips our biological capacity to integrate it. The trauma fundamentally stems from a lack of rest. Human beings are being forced to dance on the ashes of their own lives over and over again.
But progress...
When you destroy a person's crystallized intelligence, you place them in a state of high cognitive load. Without a period of stabilization, without the time to actually live in the house we've just rebuilt and let those new skills crystallize, the psychological load becomes fatal to the spirit.
But that raises a terrifying question. What happens when the fire never stops burning? You mentioned the speed of the shift earlier. That's what makes this completely unprecedented.
Right, the speed is the real variable here.
And it leads us directly to the climax of this sociological phenomenon, the realization that the cosmic dance never stops. And crucially, the music keeps getting faster.
Yes, the acceleration, that is the true terror embedded in this reality. It's not just a cycle of creation and destruction, it's a cycle that is compressing exponentially.
Exactly. Let's look at the timeline. If the cycle from manual drafting to CAD software took 30 years, an entire generation had time to adapt.
They could catch their breath.
Right, their crystallized intelligence was slowly replaced. Then, the cycle from CAD to generative AI design took 10 years. The timeline compressed, but it was still a decade. Now
it's practically overnight?
The next paradigm shift might take 3 years, and the one after that might take 8 months. The drum in Shiva's right hand is beating at an impossible rhythm. The flames are getting higher. The distinct phases of creation and destruction are blurring into a single continuous roar.
Which perfectly illustrates why your philosophy of flowing with the dance ultimately breaks down. At a certain velocity, adaptation is biologically and neurologically impossible.
I wouldn't say impossible.
You cannot be in a permanent state of fluid intelligence. The realization we are arriving at is that there is no finish line. There is no plateau where you get to just be. You either dance or you die.
It is a terrifying realization, I will grant you that. The sheer velocity is breathtaking, but the acceleration actually reinforces my central thesis.
How could it possibly do that?
Because the music is speeding up. Holding on to any past version of yourself is practically a death sentence. The system destroys you if you stop dancing to catch your breath.
Exactly.
Therefore, the only logical, survival-oriented response is to completely sever the emotional cord between your sense of self and your economic output. You have to view your professional life purely as a temporary avatar.
But you can't sever that cord without severing your humanity. That's exactly what identity fatigue is. You are asking people to detach from the very things that give human life its texture and meaning.
I'm asking them to survive.
Competence, contribution, mastery, stability, a sense of place in the community. You are asking them to become sociopaths regarding their own life's work.
Not sociopaths, philosophers. Detachment is not a lack of feeling. It is an understanding of impermanence.
Modern Tandava isn't just that it destroys your job. It's that if you stop to catch your breath, if you succumb to the biological need for rest, the system destroys you.
The fire doesn't discriminate.
It discards you as obsolete data. We are literally treating human lives like deprecated code in a software repository. When a line of code is no longer optimal, it is deleted. Humans cannot be deleted without profound societal trauma.
The alternative is worse, though. The alternative is being crushed by the wheel because you refuse to move. The cosmic fire does not care about our nostalgia.
It's not nostalgia, it's biology.
It doesn't care about how hard we worked to master the old ways, or how much metabolic energy it took to build those neural pathways. The fire only knows how to burn, and the drum only knows how to beat.
And that is exactly why it is weaponized. It takes a myth of natural cosmic balance and perverts it into a mechanism of perpetual human exhaustion. When we say humans are not software, we are issuing a desperate warning about predictive processing and cognitive load.
Yes.
We are running up against the hard limits of the human condition.
We are certainly running up against the limits of the industrial era human condition, but we are being asked to evolve into something fundamentally different.
I don't know if we can.
Well, as we draw this analysis to a close, my position remains grounded in the necessity of that evolution. The cosmic fire of AI disruption is terrifying, yes, but it is an unavoidable force of nature now. The agonizing pace of this modern Tandava is a reality we cannot vote away or wish into slowing down.
True.
I argue that our only salvation lies in mastering the art of letting go. If we can detach our egos from our transient skills, if we can accept that expertise is temporary, we can survive the flames and perhaps even find profound beauty in the endless, accelerated act of creation.
And my stance remains that this current economic and technological structure is an unsustainable, unnatural demand that fundamentally breaks the human spirit.
Right.
Forcing human beings into a permanent state of fluid intelligence denies us the right to a stable identity. It leads directly to systemic trauma and identity fatigue. The algorithm demands an endless sacrifice of our hard-earned experience.
It demands a lot, yes.
Framing this endless cognitive destruction as spiritual evolution merely provides philosophical cover for a system that denies human beings the basic biological right to rest, to reflect, and to simply exist.
Well, we both clearly acknowledge the profound reality we are facing here. The accelerating algorithm is an inescapable presence, and the destructive fire is only growing hotter.
Absolutely.
We obviously remain deeply at odds over the fundamental nature of the solution, whether humanity must spiritually and psychologically alter its very nature to survive the flames, or whether the system itself is an unsustainable cruelty that will eventually shatter under its own impossible velocity.
There is a deep, unresolved tension there that every single listener is currently navigating in their own lives.
Absolutely. The mythology of the Tandava holds incredible layers of insight into how society might navigate this existential crisis, and it demands deep, continuous reflection. There is so much more to explore in how we understand our relationship to technology, to our intelligence, and to ourselves.
Look at your hands. Look at everything you've built. Now imagine striking the match yourself. Because tomorrow, the dance demands a new sacrifice.